This episode is brought to you by Michelob Ultra. Michelob Ultra is perfect for more than just the summer heat this year, because not only is it refreshing and crisp with only 95 calories, but Ultra is also the official beer sponsor of Team USA at the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Celebrate every point, race, and moment with Team USA and Michelob Ultra for the Olympic Games Paris 2024. Stock up on Michelob Ultra and cheer on Team USA. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2024 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. Let's get through the unofficial first depth chart of the Washington Commanders this summer. Unofficial. I'm going to play some of Dan Quinn from yesterday in his press conference in a little bit, mainly talking about Jayden Daniels and Brandon Coleman because those are the headliners. Spoiler alert, they're actually going to start against the Jets and are currently the starters, but they went out of their way to say over and over and over, unofficial depth chart. So the first one is out, and there's a lot to digest as we get set for the preseason to actually begin. Tomorrow is the first open practice, joint practice that they're going to have. It's happening up in New York against the Jets. I will be there, so I will give you a full recap because it's going to be in the morning when the show is airing. So I'll give you a full recap on Commanders Daily at 5:30 tomorrow, and then we'll have a full recap Friday on the show as we get ready for the first preview show of the fall as we get set for Commanders and Jets Saturday, high noon kickoff up at MetLife Stadium. But all right, let's go through the unofficial depth chart here, and let's just start with the headline, which is that Jayden Daniels is unofficially going to be called quarterback one, and Brandon Coleman is the left tackle as the starter for now. And Dan Quinn, you'll hear this. I'm going to play this from yesterday. Kind of goes on and on about how don't read too much into it at this point, but that's where we are. Here was Dan Quinn yesterday.
Good news. I think you'll see some rookies competing at or near the top, and they've earned the right to compete for that. Still unofficial, and like I said, I'll let you know when we make final decisions through joint practices and other things that I certainly want to see for that as the entire process. But I've been pleased with the guys and the competing, and so for the guys who are listed near the top at that, they've earned that right to do that, and no better time over the next 2 weeks than to go battle against some other teams and some practices and some games. So the next 2 weeks will be a blast, and kind of like that ramp up kind of starts into tomorrow as we get rolling for that. So really cool couple weeks ahead that we'll really have to hammer down.
Hey, Coach, as you talk about the depth chart and going to play against other teams, how do you feel about the depth of this O-line? As there seems like some stuff is lingering with some of your guys.
Regarding?
Just Wiley's tightness.
Injury, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Well, one, I think that happens sometimes, at different spots. I kind of look at it the other way to say, what's going to happen when those moments, take place where you get another opportunity, you get a chance to shine further. So I'd be more concerned for a player that hasn't played to miss than somebody like Andrew who's, really detailed in what he's going to do. So the strength's coming back. He's getting closer. He'll test it again today. So I think he's closer than further. But, that is part of training camp, and it does provide moments and opportunities for people to see what they can do. And that's kind of one of the cool parts about camp. You never like to see a guy get banged up. And at this time of year, we're going to do a good job to make sure that, the guys come back and they're healthy. Leaving training camp with a healthy roster is really important, too. And so not just entering it. It's more important. So, I guess there's opportunity when that happens.
Looking ahead to the preseason, not just Jayden, but your quarterbacks in general, do you have pitch counts, snap counts in mind? Is it more of a free-flowing thing?
I wouldn't say it's free-flowing, but we're going to try to get, work for all the guys, as we're moving forward into this game. That makes it difficult to do, but all the guys have earned that right to try to do that. So, we're going to try to push that everybody can get some reps and some turns. Not all the reps will be the same for practice for Thursday, those being exactly equal from practice into the game. For instance, some may play more in practice and play less in the game. Some may play less in practice and play more in the game, but that's really by design, and especially for some of the youngest players, I really wanted them to have their moment to, show what they can do and prove, whether it's here or elsewhere, that they got the chops to play in this league.
When you're formulating the depth chart, how much of it is, hey, this is where we're at, versus, hey, we either want to help these guys compete or motivate them, or we don't want to tip our hand to other teams? How do you go about formulating the
Yeah,
unofficial
not
depth
much.
chart?
Sean had a big role in this one. So I would say it's really where we're at. And that's why I made the point of, like, I know it's a story for you, and I recognize that you guys are doing your jobs to do that, but it's not internally. And it'll be much like you see at practice, into the same format of how we're rolling through things. But like I said, I'm really excited for what the next couple weeks will bring. There'll be some separation for people. Like, quite honestly, if I had a real depth chart right now, there'd probably be, 15 starters, because I'm not quite certain between this person and this person. So that's why it's not as big a deal internally. We're just, pushing it to find the information. And the good news, these things sort themselves out, but it does take some time and some practices to do that. And that's why I've been pretty adamant about, well, why aren't you doing this? Like, man, this is like, we're getting ready for the season. And so I want to make sure I got the big view for that.
In your last two stops with Matt Ryan and Dak, those were veteran guys. And so now with 3 preseason games, I guess, how do you go about building the plan for, hey, this is what we want Jayden to do in the preseason with Cliff and the other guys?
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on the game, the opponent, what do we want to see. So it won't be the same, that we're looking for in each of the preseason games. But in this game, this is what we'd like to see. In this game was what we'd like to see. It also is about the practices too, because guys like Jayden will get more reps in those practices than they likely will in the games. And so they count a lot too. And that's why I'm a proponent of the practices and doing it one day, off day, then play the game. I really like that format.
Is Jayden Daniels QB1 on the first depth chart? And will
On the
he
first
start?
unofficial depth chart, he is.
Will he start Saturday?
The first unofficial depth chart, he will.
Brandon Coleman, what have you liked from him? And is he a starter on the unofficial depth chart?
Yes, he is. And he's really had a good camp. I've seen a couple things that happened. We were referring to some injuries earlier. So when Wiley went down in practice, we moved Brandon over to right tackle for 20, 25 snaps that day. No problem. And he's just got a good demeanor. He's very intentional about his practice. And but both he and Jayden have earned that right, to start for this first preseason game. Like I said to you, everybody earlier, this is the first good step, and that's what it should be.
Okay, so that was Dan Quinn yesterday before the final practice in Ashburn before the travel day today up to New York. They're going to practice against the Jets tomorrow morning. He will speak again, but he was very clear. The other day when he mentioned Jayden Daniels will play, no one asked him, is he going to start? I don't know if he was going to answer the question. They waited to put out this depth chart because they put out their notes, and it is, again, unofficial. First depth chart, Jayden Daniels is expected to be the starter, assuming everything goes well in the joint practice against the Jets. Brandon Coleman, we've noticed this now for about a week running here. There was a tremendous amount of musical chairs that started happening on the offensive line. Cornelius Lucas kind of walked into camp as a presumed starter, but not entrenched. Andrew Wiley walked in as a presumed starter and maybe more entrenched than I would say Lucas was. Trent Scott back in the spring was practicing more at left tackle as a backup, and Lucas was not being used as a swing tackle. And as things have progressed here into the summer, Coleman has emerged as someone that they're leaning into. And part of that, as Dan Quinn talked about, Andrew Wiley's actually missed a lot of time over the last week, or he's been out on the field, but hasn't been utilized that much. They're describing this just as tightness. They're not discussing it as anything that they feel is long-term. But it left us wondering for, a few days there, is there something happening here where they both tackles? And I felt that Quinn was a little bit more certain about Wiley. He used some very strong terms about him being a professional. He knows what he's doing, and that they're just getting his body right and allowing others to take advantage of the opportunities. But when the starters keep rolling out in recent days, Coleman's been the one that's been out there. So we'll have to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. The joint practices are going to tell us a lot, especially against the Jets in that front. The preseason games should tell us a lot. We'll see how much the Jets or Dolphins starters actually go against Brandon Coleman and Jayden Daniels for that matter. And so I don't think this is a set done deal, but we have been trending this way for a while. So now it's starting to sound like, at least if you listen closely, if Wiley is right, he, Cosme, Biotish, Nick Allegretti, and Coleman would be the starting offensive line that I would expect. Cornelius Lucas would then fall back into his swing tackle mode. Trent Scott would fall into the swing tackle mode, and we move on from there. On Jayden Daniels, I mean, honestly, none of this is a surprise. And I thought Dan Quinn was honest about it from day one, where he said, this isn't a secret what we're trying to do. Cliff Kingsbury spoke to the media yesterday as well and described like the progress that Daniels has had. As he even said, he goes, he must be studying this like crazy at night, because he walks in the next morning and every day he's like, okay, I got this. And we already knew about what's going on early in the mornings with him showing up early and getting to work. The work ethic is really carrying over here. And the progression in practice, and again, it's very hard to tell. And even Kingsbury was open about the fact that they're not showing a lot of what they're doing. But that said, he was emphatic in how he's just kind of growing day by day, and it's happening really fast. I want to caution and not get too ahead of myself on anything. I have liked what I've seen. I know what the coaches are saying. I know what they're willing to say about it. They want to keep talking about how this is a process, and I get that, and I'm on board with that. I've been around this too long to sit there and jump to any conclusions. But this is an obvious choice, even if it's baked in. There's going to be ups and downs with him and with this team with all the changes. And to remember, he is a rookie, but it's off to the perfect start. His humility, his ability, his work ethic, and now confirmation 2 weeks into camp that they didn't say he's ready. He didn't say he's ready, but he's already at the point where everyone's going, I don't know how you wouldn't actually move forward with him as the starter. And so that's where we are now. All right, here's what the rest of the unofficial first depth chart read. Terry McLaurin obviously is a starting wide receiver. So is Jahan Dotson. In the slot, Olamide Zaccheaus, who I've kind of felt through the first couple of weeks camp locked to make the team. Not that that's really that much of a surprise, but they did draft Luke McCaffrey. He's listed as a primary backup, and that's kind of played out in what we've seen in practice. Zach Ertz comes in as the starting tight end. John Bates is listed as the secondary tight end. Third name on the list is Ben Sinnott. So, none of that is a surprise. The offensive line reads Coleman, Allegretti, Biotish, Cosme, and Wiley. So there's the confirmation as well. There's confirmation that Wiley is the starter, and that being out, for the last week or so, or in and out of the lineup or doing limited work is not an indication that they feel differently about him and his standing on the team. So that was kind of confirmation for me. Jayden Daniels is quarterback 1. Marcus Mariota, obviously, quarterback 2. The 4 running backs, if they keep 4, B-Rob and Austin Eckler obviously are the top 2. Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols are the 2 named as the primary backups there. We'll see if they keep 3 or 4 when we get down to cutdown day. All right, on defense, no surprise across the front of the defensive line. The 4 starters have been the ones that we've seen when they put out the quote-unquote ones. You see these names: Cleveland Farrell, Deron Payne, John Allen, and Dorrance Armstrong. Primary backups, it's worth noting who they are, because on the outside, it's KJ Henry and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. So that means Andre Jones, a draft pick from a year ago, had some promise, is playing behind the 7th round pick that they made this year. Johnny Newton is the primary reserve to John Allen, the primary reserve to Deron Payne. So Fedarian Mathis, another former draft pick of the Ron Rivera crew, very much fighting just to get a job on this team. Listed on the edge, Jalen Harris behind KJ Henry and Andre Jones behind Javonte Jean-Baptiste, which would lead you to believe that as an edge rusher, Jamin Davis is not considered someone, at least in the unofficial first depth chart, as someone who's going to make the team. So he's going to have to win it back as a linebacker. I think that's become clear here over the first couple of weeks, unless they, and I'm assuming in the preseason games, they're going to give him opportunities on the edge to win. Being that Aaron Rodgers isn't playing, I don't know how much of the offensive linemen are going to play for the Jets, the starters, that is. So here's an opportunity here for Jamin Davis. I'm assuming he's going to play and get an opportunity to kind of show that he has some ability on the edge and has, worked with Ryan Kerrigan extensively to try to, fill that void. And we'll see. But as it stands right now, in my opinion, I had a hard time buying him making the team primarily as an edge rusher. He is going to have to win a job as a linebacker once again. On that front, the three linebackers that are listed as starters, Dante Fowler, who also kind of serves as linebacker / edge rusher, I think that's what they're hoping Jamin Davis would become, is a Dante Fowler clone, and obviously Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu behind them as the primary backups. None of this is a surprise. Anthony Pittman, veteran, and Jordan McGee, their 5th-round rookie. Davis is placed right behind Dante Fowler. So if they keep 5 linebackers, Fowler, Wagner, Louvu, McGee, draft pick, probably Pittman. So Davis, again, he's going to have to show up in this preseason to have a real shot, I think, to make the team. I was talking to somebody, though, Zach Selby was talking about this, who writes for the Commanders site and does a lot of work for them, and I think he's been very smart on kind of covering the team and analyzing the team. He kind of pointed out, James is a former first-round pick, so is there value in keeping him around because of a compensatory pick that could come on the other side? And you take a chance that if he plays, that he makes some impact plays, has 4 sacks at the deadline, like right around the trade deadline. And then you start to wonder, does his value go up from what they could get right now? And eventually, could his value be more on the other side in terms of a compensatory pick if he were to sign something with another team? I agree with Zach here that there's a case that Davis should probably make the team as a linebacker, mainly because he probably has more value that way to hang on through the rest of this season and get to the other side. But that's a decision they have to make. And, this is not a coaching staff that is really given off the impression to me that there's any sacred cows, that they're playing any games with the roster. It's been so far, it's been lined up as best man wins. Coleman is the starting left tackle because they believe he's earned that right, not because they're just giving it to him. He's a 3rd-round pick. It's not like they spent a 1st-round pick on him. So they have given off the impression that this is a fair is fair, mano y mano, go at it, win the job type of situation. And I'll get to the corners in a minute too, because that was a very interesting decision that was made. But I buy this and we'll see. And so I think there's a lot of arguments for Davis's value and whether just cutting him would be the way to go. If he's not going to make it as an edge, he's got to make it as a linebacker. Will that happen? I don't know. As for the secondary, let's start with the safeties because it was easier. Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin have been a pairing that we've seen from the spring on, and they're the starting free safety. Strong safety behind them, Derek Forrest and Jeremy Reeves. I thought that was very interesting to see that. Forrest has had some undisclosed injury this summer. Reeves, obviously a special teams ace that they re-signed. He's going to make the team, I think, mainly in that. Forrest, I was questioning. I didn't see him on the field very much. Percy Butler's been getting kind of primary backup safety work. He's listed as a 3rd player there. So is he safe? I don't know. He had gotten so much run, though, that I started to believe that he was going to maybe supplant Forrest, but maybe that was not exactly what was going on. So Forrest's name popping up as the primary backup solidified him back as the pick to make the team. All right, last group, which I thought was really, really interesting, was the cornerback group. Mike Sanders still is listed as a starter. Walk-in rookie as what they're calling the star, the slot corner. Benjamin St. Juste is listed as a starter, not a surprise. Michael Davis, though, listed. If you've listened to the show, you'll know that really over the first couple of weeks when the ones go out there, it's been St. Juste and Forbes. And I've been saying this all along. I've been expecting way more fluidity in that corner group, and I haven't seen it. And I was actually surprised by this, but Davis getting listed as a starter kind of tells you that the competition is actually on. It is more fluid than maybe they've let loose and shown. Emmanuel Forbes is listed as a primary backup to St. Juste. Tariq Castro Fields is listed as a primary backup to Michael Davis. And Noah Igbenogany is listed as the primary slot corner. On special teams, Tress Way is currently, is obviously going to be the punter and the holder. Tyler Ott's obviously going to be the snapper. Right now, the kicker is Ramiz Ahmed. Riley Patterson, who they just picked up from Jacksonville, is currently second. He hasn't been here as long. that's going to be an interesting battle this summer. We'll see who makes or misses in the preseason games. The punt returner right now is Jamison Crowder, so that would lead you to believe that he's going to beat out Byron Pringle for what could be a last slot as a receiver. He's going to be the primary returner. And then this name might have surprised a couple people, but it didn't to me because in the spring I pointed this out. Igbenogany was listed as the first team kick returner. I'm not surprised. He's got some juice, some speed. I think he's going to make this team. Dan Quinn has said this. They're looking for people to be able to do other things. He described it as other things that they would like to see some of these players be able to do. And Igbenogany has been kind of quietly on my under the radar player that might end up playing a lot, having different roles. Former first round pick, bounced around the league, but the advantage he has in this corner group where there's a lot of questions, second year in the scheme, worked with Quinn and Witt down in Dallas, comes here with a higher level ceiling of talent as a former first round pick, obviously has shown some ability on kick return, wherewithal to want to do it. I have a feeling he's going to end up playing a lot in the secondary this year. That's just my gut feeling. All right, we'll take a quick break. Scott Jackson, who hosts the postgame show, is going to join us next. Bram watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
This episode is brought to you by our good friends at NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. I'm sure by now you've all gotten back into your Sunday routines, but they could be even better. With NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get the most live NFL games all in one place, every game, every Sunday, and you can even watch up to 4 different games at once with Multiview, one of my favorite inventions of this decade. It's exactly what you need to catch all the action. Make your Sundays more magical. And also, YouTube TV is great. I got it this year. It's awesome. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Device and content restrictions apply. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games.
Welcome back, Bram Watch That Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. So earlier this week out at practice, I ran into my friend and the host of the postgame show, Scott Jackson. He'll be joined once again on our flagship station for the calls of the game starting this weekend with the one and only Fred Smoot. So good or bad, you get an entertaining outcome if you listen to those two go at it. And I asked him, and you'll hear this in the interview with him, what happens if we're good? Because that's actually been a rare occurrence over the last 20 years or so. There's the one-off moments. You're going to hear from Joe Gibbs in just a little bit, but it's been a one-off, or two-off with Gibbs where the team has actually had some success. So it was one of the talking points as we kind of went through the season and we get set for preseason game number 1. Here was my conversation with the host of the postgame show, Scott Jackson. All right, here with Scott Jackson. Back for more. You've signed up to do a show with Smoot every week again.
That's right. I'm a glutton for punishment. No, it's fun. As you know, Fred keeps it light and entertaining, and hopefully we'll have some good stuff to talk about this season. It's obviously exciting when you got a regime change. You got a number 2 overall pick who's a Heisman Trophy winner who's shown a lot of promise here early, so a lot of things to get pumped up about this season.
Yeah. I've told people this before. I go, one of your real major skill sets is somehow the two of you, when the team is bad, is able to keep things entertaining. And I think we're all hoping that that's just not going to be the case anymore. So where are you on what if they're good, and how am I going to act on the air if they're actually good?
I'm going to be obnoxious, man. I'm going to finally, all the years of stuff I've had pent up that I've wanted to trash talk with, it would be great if I get the opportunity to ever use it on the air. If they're winning at a high level, it'd be awesome. I mean, you're right. I mean, we've had these years of just strange stuff, and Fred and I try to keep it light always, and try to keep it hopeful too, with the fans. But at times it's not easy, especially last season. Was pretty rough. But look, if the light at the end of the tunnel is they found themselves a franchise quarterback in a structure of an organization that is the way I think all of us had dreamed it would be someday. I think that's exciting, and I hope it's going to be a good problem if they're winning a lot. That'll be something fun to deal with.
Do you like what they did in the offseason as in overall, and how you look at how they kind of baseline the roster?
Yeah, it's interesting because you have a lot of guys on short-term deals, but a lot of veterans with stuff to prove, but guys that also had good resumes. I think the Bobby Wagner signing to me was like the wow of all of them. I mean, when you see him
that was a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Like, he literally came here to be with this coaching staff. It's the only reason you can come up with.
Absolutely. He could have gone to teams that would be considered more contenders and stuff like that. So that was interesting. I think the guys they brought in, ironically, from Carolina, Luvu and Shen are two of the most interesting defensive pieces, I think, as well, next to Wagner. And, I think Austin Eckler, I've really been a fan of his throughout his career, but, obviously part of his problem has been staying on the field. But as a pass receiver on the backfield, I just think about what Kingsbury's done in the past. This is kind of an exciting match potentially here. And, some of these young guys that, we're going to find out about, I know Coach Quinn can't say enough great things about Mike Sanistrell, and Nick Saban called him the best player in the draft on draft night. So those kind of pieces they brought in addition to obviously Jayden Daniels, makes this a very interesting group to watch this year.
What's just your early impression of Jayden? Now, we haven't seen him play in a game. We're going to get him against the Jets. I don't know exactly what that means, but at least he's going to play a little bit. Just at this point, what's your impression of him?
Well, and I know you've said this before, and a lot of other people said it, but I've heard it from people at LSU that covered him closely. The off-the-field version of him is just as impressive as the on-the-field version in terms of leadership, in terms of the person. And I think that's important here because, as you know, with a starting quarterback, there's so many things that are thrown at these guys. When they're franchise quarterbacks, you have to have a certain level of maturity and ability to be humble, to handle all that. There's a lot to handle besides just the X's and O's and what the defenses are trying to do to you every week. So I think that, he checks a lot of the boxes here so far. And, just to build is, they just got to keep building on it. It's exciting, and I'm happy to hear we'll see him in the preseason game number 1 and get him on the field. I mean, let's see him against real defense.
Like we were talking, as you can tell, we're at practice right now, and you were asking me, are they doing a lot of design runs with him? And my answer is, I'm not really sure what the offense is because I don't think they're showing us a lot at this point. But if I were to guess just by what I am seeing, no, that it's in the holster, but it's not something that they're going to profile. So what is your thought process on, we know he can do that. How much of it should we see in a game?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because if you go back, we always do this. We go back to the 2012 season when they showed us, we had a running quarterback here, obviously Robert Griffin III, and they showed a lot of that in the bubble. That preseason, I remember thinking, are they really going to do this in a game? and then obviously they did it, and kind of changed football in a lot of ways with the way they ran that offense. But yeah, I think if you go back, and we were discussing this off the air with Kyler Murray, I don't remember a lot of design runs. Yeah,
neither do I. He scrambled a lot.
In the red zone there were some plays, but I mean mostly his were scrambles, and Jayden, if you look at LSU too, a lot of that was off of some scrambles. So I think that makes sense. I mean, again, everybody said one of the best things about him was his ability to get rid of the football quickly, ball placement, read defenses, and so if he can do that, and you can limit him, getting out in space in terms of design stuff, just let that be like maybe his ultimate check down. If it's open, take it, and just be smart and protect yourself. So I think that's what we all are concerned about, right? Is if he can slide and get out of bounds and make sure he doesn't take some of those crazy hits he took in the SEC, because they're going to hit you a lot harder up here. But yeah, I look, if they can move the ball in the air without him having to run too much, I think that's good. But it's going to be part of it at some point, right? Like whether it's by design, right, or he can just see the gaps opening up and he just take it and make a big play.
I mean, to me, outside of Lamar Jackson, it really was kind of a run first, turned into a pass first quarterback. I don't even know if I'd call him that yet, but he's gone in that direction. But I think he's special. Most of these quarterbacks who kind of come in and are really more run-oriented first, they might make some dynamic plays, but that doesn't really win. Like, Jackson seems to be an outlier for that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Fields, and it's amazing the hype that is behind him still. And I guess, assuming he's going to Pittsburgh, it seems like a good fit with Arthur Smith. But we haven't seen him throw it, at a high level on a consistent basis. He's made some dynamic plays with his legs. But you're right. I mean, you need to be able to throw it first and be able to do that, and then obviously utilize the run to. And I think that's what it's a delicate balancing act, because you want to still use it in Arsenal. Like, you like the fact you want him to be a dual threat too. You want the defense to think about it, but you also want to manage his health and his long-term ability and availability, most importantly.
All right, let's talk about a few groups that I think are in question. Offensive line, they've been juggling people here throughout the week. I think it's settling down a little bit, but they clearly, they're almost exemplifying that we don't have 5 Pro Bowlers here. We don't know who the starters are. We're going to figure this out. So what do you make of that through the first couple weeks of camp?
Well, it sure sounds like Biotish and Cosme are the only 2 guys that seem to be guaranteed where they are right now, right?
Yeah, I think Allegretti is closer to it, but he's been rotating too, which is why people asked him about it. But Quinn kind of clarified the middle seems a little set.
Okay, so you got those 3 set. And the interesting thing is obviously rookie Brandon Coleman. If he can be the immediate left tackle starter right away, I think that's exciting. It's also scary.
I think it's a huge break if it works out that way too.
Rookie, right? Rookie left tackle, rookie quarterback.
And a 3rd-round pick. Like he was like the 10th tackle taken. Like remember that part.
That's a big part, and a lot of people thought he was a guard. Right? Like there was a lot of, oh no, he's more of a guard in the NFL. This group obviously thinks he's a tackle, and they've seen some proof of that so far, which is exciting. I like Cornelius Lucas. I thought actually last year he should have played more in either at the right side or you just put him on the left side when Leno was having his issues. He's always been a plug and play guy, so I think you have that luxury with him. You got to see Wiley, right? He's had, I guess, a lot of
tightness.
Tightness is the official word here so far. And these guys aren't married to that, that addition. They didn't bring him in. Just like a lot of other players here, they've got to kind of prove themselves in this group. So I think that's interesting. Trent Scott's a veteran who's shown he can play when needed. So I think between those 3 guys, I think that 2 of them are going to come out as your starters, and who knows? Maybe there's a rotational piece to this. Remember for a while they were rotating Cosme and Lucas a couple seasons ago. Yeah. Maybe that's something that they look at on the right side at least, maybe not the left side.
I think if somehow Coleman is really ahead of the curve and is at left tackle, that I could see Lucas supplanting Wiley as the starting right tackle, but I don't know. That's just a guess.
Yeah, it wouldn't be crazy, right? Just because again they don't. Wasn't their decision to bring Wiley here. Let's be honest, if you look at the Chiefs, they didn't seem to be too worried about losing him after coming off a Super Bowl. So, and he was kind of again, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? I mean, he's been both in his career, and there's some question as to whether or not he's better suited to be in the guard position. So, I think it wouldn't shock me if Lucas was playing a lot this year.
How about the receiving core? Like, as you look at them as a whole, what do you see going into the season?
Well, obviously, you got Terry. He hopes Jahan Dotson is the guy we saw year 1, not last year. It's interesting how often Dan Quinn brings up De'Ami Brown. I think that's very good news for him, and hopefully he'll continue to do well.
I think he's in no threat to lose a job here. And I felt that way. I know a lot of people put him squarely, because he hasn't produced a lot, and it's a Rivera pick, but I look at the depth of receiving core, and he does keep name-checking him, and it makes me think that he's pretty safe at this point.
Yeah, and it seems like Luke McCaffrey gets high marks for everything he does on and off the field, so I think he'll be certainly a big part of this. And then look, Byron Pringle, who they just brought back, we know what he can do for you in the return game. Last year as a receiver, he did some nice things with a team that a system that he knew. Now he's coming into a different system, but I think he's interested in some of the young guys, right? Is it Tinsley, Jermaine, who kind of sorts through there? A lot of that's going to be decided on kick coverage, punt coverage, and that's how they'll figure that out. But definitely some young players there that are unproven. But I think your top 3 guys are pretty solid. And again, if you throw a veteran like Pringle in there, or even a Jamison Crowder, I think you could feel good going out to Sunday. But it's certainly still an area that's emerging.
How about corner? How do you feel about corner at this point?
That's interesting because obviously the coach loves Mike Sandstrom. He's told you that since day 1 of this process, hasn't changed. He's your nickel corner. Benjamin St. Juste, Emmanuel Forbes. You would think that those are the guys that have got the shot here to be the next guys, but there's a lot of competition behind them. Obviously, let Christian Holmes go today. One of the Rivera holdovers. I like to think that this is a tailor-made kind of defense from what we saw in Dallas for a guy like Forbes, who was a great ball hawk in college. It just seems like this should be natural for him, right? Like this should be
if they can generate a pass rush, which is an open question because we don't have a Micah Parsons here.
Do not.
Right? So if they can generate a pass rush, I agree with that. If they can't, we get into an interesting matchup situation with him.
Absolutely. Then you just got to be smarter about it than the previous group was, right? Like maybe not just leave him alone on an island against A.J. Brown in Philadelphia, in his first season. But yeah, I think they've got some depth there. You got some veterans that have played in the league that can help you there. And I think like for a guy like St. Juste, it's like a big year for him, right? Because we've seen it at times like, wow, he's really close to breaking out, and then he'll have some type of nagging injury or whatever. And obviously Forbes, this is just a big bounce back. And I like the way he's been carrying himself. What he said the other day on the podium is like, look, I got to prove myself to these guys. They don't know me. I'm really starting over basically, and that's true. And hopefully it's a good start over for him.
All right, last thing. I've told a lot of people I really just like what I hear from Dan Quinn.
Yeah.
I think the messaging is right. They're not putting a lot of expectations. It's clear why the players like him. I think he's very honest. I think there's real competition going on here that there's no sacred cows this year, and that should be in year one. What are you hearing when you listen to Dan Quinn?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's the nice part of this is I think, Joe Gibbs and Bobby Beathard used to have this pact. Doesn't matter how they got here. We treat them all the same when they get here. And I feel like Dan Quinn kind of falls in that kind of philosophy as well with Adam Peters, which is the way it should be, right? It doesn't matter how they got here, who paid them, who's got more money, like who's the best player, who's going to fit for you each week and help you win games. And I think that's exciting. I think he's everything I heard about him coming into him getting this job has been true to this point. I mean, I know you know Wes Durham very well, the voice of the Falcons.
Yeah.
Going to say enough great things about
He
Dan
said
Quinn.
it to me too.
The guy,
he emailed me immediately and
Yeah.
said, "You're going to love this
Yeah.
guy. You're going
Yeah.
to love the way he goes about everything."
Just the way and from what everybody says, the way he's in front of the room, he's been the best coach. People have said who played for him over the years, he was the best coach I had in front of the room, meaning communicating to guys. There was no surprises, there's no agendas, and that's what people appreciate about him. And I think those are the kind of guys that should be rewarded in this league, and hopefully, things will work out for him because, again, he's been a breath of fresh air here for sure, and I think he's been a great face of this thing here in the early going.
Because we're trying to have a post-game show where we have a lot of wins to talk about.
Yes, exactly.
For once, it'd be nice, right?
Absolutely, we'd love to have that. But yeah, and me and Fred can still do the jokes, but happier, on happier times we hope.
Yeah, the best part too is noon kickoff for a preseason game. What a win!
I know
what
that's
a win!
Huge win.
Yeah.
We got the late ones after that, but that is interesting. A noon kickoff on a Saturday, but it's crazy. I mean, they're in pads here today. You just think, this is the Sunday norm, not too far down the road here. How quickly this offseason's gone by.
All right, Scott and Fred on the post-game show once again as the 2024 season begins this weekend. Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you, Bram. Always good talking to you.
Joe Gibbs visited practice. You'll hear from him next. This is the Bram Weinstein Show on ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Welcome back. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. Yesterday, the one and only, the legend, Joe Gibbs, showed up to the practice facility in Ashburn. He had a little bit of a photo op with Melba, who is the super fan who comes out to camp every summer, and this year was a special one. She turned 100, so they brought her out to camp, and Joe Gibbs spent some time with her. I'll get to his interview in a moment. I got to watch Gibbs and the Hall of Famer Darrell Green speak to the team. We were not close enough to hear what they had to say to the team, but Green, of course, played 20 years here, went into Canton, all-time leader in interceptions, has all-time special teams moments for this team, might be a Mount Rushmore player for this team. And this fall, against Carolina Panthers at home, Washington is going to retire his number 28. They did this with Sonny Jurgensen. They're now going to do it with Darrell Green. I think you can name some of the others that are coming. And of course, maybe I don't know if he just belongs on Mount Rushmore or if he kind of goes even above, whatever is above Mount Rushmore for the Washington franchise. That is the image of Joe Gibbs, who is the embodiment of everything that was successful about the organization in the early 80s into the 1990s, where they went to 4 Super Bowls and they won 3 of them and did so with 3 different quarterbacks. And none of those quarterbacks are actually in the Hall of Fame. I would argue that decade run was as impressive as anything that's ever happened in NFL history, partially based on that. We spent the last couple of days, you heard from B. Mitch. If you missed the show earlier this week, check it out, where I got a chance to talk to B. Mitch, where, obviously he should be in the Hall of Fame. Joe Jacoby should be in the Hall of Fame. That this is kind of an underrated group of people that played during the glory years of the franchise. And of course, having Joe Gibbs back always signifies the possibility, right? The possibility that we're going to be able to kind of bring some of those glory days back here. So after he had his photo opportunity and met with some of the people and then spoke to the team after their practice alongside Darrell Green, we had the opportunity to step over and talk to Joe Gibbs, and here's what he had to say.
Pulled in out front. I said, I think I spent half my life here. I remember all the fun times, the fans, and when we had a chance, the second go around with practice here and everything. I think, as I've said, Washington is the greatest sports franchise in the world, and it's because of our fans, really. It's the most powerful city in the world, and the one thing that brings everybody together in Washington is the football team. So I appreciate being a part of it.
Melba, I heard you tell Melba, we're going to get these fans back. What gives you that belief and hope again?
Well, I think we got a situation where Josh and his leadership, from an ownership standpoint, he grew up here, loves the place. I think with the coaching staff and everything that we have now, getting everything started again. So I'm excited about where we are. I know that the fans are. So I think it's the NFL. The tough thing there, it's about winning, and I feel like we're headed back to a point where we're going to win.
Hey, Joe, the ownership is interested in RFK as a site. Could you talk about what that area, what that meant to you in your time here in Washington?
Well, I can relate to RFK. I think it was the greatest place in the world to play, and it was so different that it gave us a definite advantage. So many of the big, pristine, perfect stadiums, and here you go at RFK, people are right next to you, up close, everything's kind of old. The best story I can tell, my wife got tickets for these two couples, and so they go and they're sitting in the stadium, and they were looking around one of the pillars like this, and the lady said, Mrs. Gibbs got us these tickets. I thought they'd be good tickets. And the lady that was with her looked at her and said, these are good tickets.
If you're in the stadium, they are good tickets.
If you're in the stadium, you got good tickets. I love that place. And we seemed to fit it too, because grass field, and we were big, strong, and I think that whole atmosphere at RFK, I think was really different. And I think anytime it's different in the NFL, you got an advantage. I felt like we had an advantage playing at home. Of course, our fan base, it didn't matter what the weather was. Our fans were going to be there.
Coach, what does it mean to you when DQ says, Joe, I want you to come out, Darryl Green's out here as well? It's kind of reaching back to yesteryear with you guys.
Yeah, I think we had a reunion about 6-7 years ago. 90 guys came back. You win with players, and we had great players, and that's what you win with. And so it's great when you get somebody like Darryl. I think he's a big part of the history here, and it sounds like the Commanders are going to do something with him, so that's exciting. And to see some of the players that are here and the older coaches that are here today, it brings back great memories, really.
Coach Gibbs, I know there's the famous story of the fans yelling out at you, getting into the car after winning the Super Bowl. Does it seem like you kind of hope and feel that excitement level for this fan base might get back up to a point like that soon?
Well, I think it will. Like I said, this is, I think, the greatest fan base in sports. And I think, with everything that's taken place, I think we got a great chance for a real comeback here. So I think everybody's excited about it.
The most important position on the field is probably quarterback, and unfortunately it's kind of been a revolving door with this franchise. Now they got a young quarterback in Jayden Daniels. You've worked with rookie quarterbacks before, and obviously they're hoping he's going to be the guy here for the long term.
Yeah, I think anytime you get a chance to pick that high, I think that was their choice, and I think they feel great about it. From what my understanding is, he's looked great in practice. And so, yeah, the quarterback is a huge deal, but it really is the entire team. You're not going anywhere in the NFL if you can't play defense, special teams, and it takes everything. And obviously the offense closes the deal. So if there's anything missing, you're not going. I'll put it that way. Yeah.
All right, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, thank you.
The legendary Joe Gibbs. All right, tomorrow the team is going to be in New York for a morning practice, the first of 2 joint practices this summer, taking on the New York Jets. That leads into the preseason game that's happening on Saturday at noon. Kickoff of the first exhibition game, Jayden Daniels Brandon Coleman, the two rookies, quarterback and left tackle, slated to get a start this weekend, as they were both listed as number ones on the first unofficial depth chart that was released yesterday by the team. The expectation is, though, and Dan Quinn didn't really mince words about this, and we'll learn more after the practice, that the likelihood of Daniels and Coleman getting way more reps and opportunities in the joint practice over the game seems pretty high. And in fact, with Marcus Mariota, I'm not even sure how much time I would expect him to play in relief of Daniels, if at all. They may turn it over to Jeff Driscoll and Sam Hartman. We'll just have to see, and we'll know more after tomorrow's practice with the Jets. But I will be there in person up in New York. So I'm going to file a report for you on Commanders Daily Thursday, and we'll have a full recap on Friday's show as we get set for the first preseason game of the season. It's the Jets and the Commanders. The thing that I'm looking for most, though, tomorrow, I think the most important position group, well, probably two, offensive line, and specifically Coleman, how he fares in his one-on-ones and whatever they do, if they do any 11-on-11s. And really the other one that I'm watching very closely is the cornerback room and the cornerback competition, which hasn't been as fluid as I thought it was going to be. But all of a sudden the depth chart came out, and again, unofficial, but Michael Davis was listed ahead of Emmanuel Forbes. So watching Benjamin St. Juste, Forbes, Igbenogany for that matter, Sandra Still, all of them up against Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson et al. In whatever opportunities they get, one-on-ones and other 7-on-7, maybe some 11-on-11, not sure. That, to me, is going to be maybe the most interesting part of the day in terms of competition for the Commanders moving into the regular season, as we kind of hit this next phase of where we see some separation between the guys they're going to count on this season and the ones that still have some work to do for the next few weeks. Okay, I'll be at the Jets-Commanders practice tomorrow, full recap on Commanders Daily, and then a fuller recap on the Bram Weinstein Show on Friday. Have a great day. Bram Weinstein Show, ESPN 630 Sports Capital.